Okay. Okay, and first of all, we've established a quorum, and the quorum consists of Peter
Okay.
Halley, Peter Kahn, Gary Beller, Lou Bassano, Patty Duster, and it's Jean, right? Jean is the person who's been sworn in.
Yeah, it's me.
Yeah. Okay, so that's our quorum right now, and we may have others join us. So I'll go through these new hybrid or new open meeting guidelines or script. As a preliminary matter, this is Peter Halley, chair of the ACNVT. I've already called the quorum, and then we have a number of other prospective members who are waiting to be sworn in, who have joined us. We have no anticipated speakers today. This open meeting of the Advisory Committee of Non-Voting Taxpayers is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting, however, will feature public comment. For this meeting, the ACNVT is convening by video conference, being Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may be joined. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials have been provided to members of this body, are or will be available on the town's website. The public is encouraged to follow along using the public agenda. Now we go to the meeting ground rules. We are now turning the first item on the agenda, which happens to be, well, we're going to do minutes and stuff like that. Let's see. Okay, I think that pretty well covers it. The main issue is, remember, it's being recorded. Okay, let me go to the agenda. Let's see, do we have minutes from the last meeting for this one?
Yes, Kathy
Yeah,
sent them
okay.
out.
Okay, so is there a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
Also move.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and that sounds, anybody opposed? No, so that's unanimous. The agenda for today's meeting, motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
So moved.
And second,
Second.
all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, good. So the agenda is approved. So we've done this. We've done visit. Okay. So welcome to new members. Actually, we do have a new member who has been sworn in now. I guess I can't remember whether, Jean, you were welcomed last time or you.
No, it's been since the last meeting.
Okay, so
I ran into Libby in the hall, and I convinced her to the town hall and convinced her to swear me in.
So did you do the usual swear, like, I can't believe I've been sworn in, or something like that?
It was a variation on that.
Yeah. And so welcome, Jean. And then Patty Duster has also been the most recent swearer, and welcome, welcome, Patty.
Thank you.
Has anybody else been sworn in that we don't know about? Okay, well, we're making real progress. The what I think we want to focus on today is the STR working group meeting discussion. And I circulated the agenda for the next STR working group. And I think it's the last few items on that agenda that we really need to discuss. And Peter Kahn, who is our representative, is going to sort of, I think, lead us through that. And what the objective of today is to share with Peter what our views are for the issues that are coming up at this next meeting and beyond. As a bit of background, I think as everybody knows, the annual town meeting was last weekend and Monday. It covered 2 days. And I guess the most relevant things are, I think everything we opposed actually failed to pass. So we're obviously very persuasive. Most importantly, in this short-term rental area, Article 60 was defeated, as were all of the other articles on both sides. And it appears that the town has decided to stay the course with the short-term rental working group and is looking forward to a proposal as to what to do sometime at a special town meeting that will be held in the fall. And so the burden of all that falls on Peter's shoulders as our representative on that group. And as I understand from the agenda at the next meeting, they're actually going to start to formulate proposals as to what to do, if anything, with the short-term rental. And I think there's a growing consensus that at the very least, the town needs to clearly articulate whether short-term rentals are allowed or not allowed. As the situation exists right now, there are 3 lawsuits challenging the town's determination that short-term rentals are allowed because it's not specifically stated in the bylaws. And there's case law on kind of both sides of the issue as to whether the bylaws have to specifically permit short-term renting in order to allow it. So there's a consensus that I think that needs to be straightened out. And then the next issue is assuming short-term renting is a permitted use of one's residential property, whether there should be any regulation of short-term rental as to the amount and timing and this and that and the other thing of short-term renting. So Peter, I think that sort of states where we are today. You may want to add to that, and perhaps you can kick off what the short-term rental group is doing and what you need from us to help you understand the position that should be taken.
Okay, good. Well, that's a good overview. Let me put a little more meat on the bones. I'll take your sympathy vote because we met for 10 hours on Thursday, May 4th. It was in person for those who were on the island. From myself, it was 10 hours sitting in front of a screen with a short break for lunch and dinner. It was painful, and not only for that reason, but just to listen to the back and the forth and the back and the forth. And but ultimately, there were some. There seemed to be some coalescing around some particular ideas. And I'm just let me just give you, so for those of you who watched or were present for the town meeting last Saturday when Article 60 was debated and went down to a rather resounding defeat. You may recall that one of the STWRG members, Jim, whose last name escapes me, gave a statement which we had approved, and it sort of summarized where we are. And I think it's best, let me just walk through that and then add some things to it, and then it will get us to where we need to go, which are, and some of the specifics, and we're going to be meeting next Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, May 16th, for 3 hours, and there's going to be some further debate on some of these, and that's where I need your help. Anyhow, all right. So the general goals, I think we can. I'm sort of pleased to report that the key issue for us, at least, of non-discrimination against against seasonal residents, seems now to be well established and well accepted. So there is a agreed goal that we shall avoid discrimination against seasonal residents and avoid negative economic impact on the local economy as well, which is something that, of course, we've talked about. Other general goals are to preserve the opportunities for those who rely on the income from short-term rentals on island to keep their home continuing to be just that, a short-term rental now and into the future. So the idea being that short-term rentals will be declared to be legal with a specific zoning bylaw, followed at the same time with a general bylaw which will regulate those, and we'll get to that in a minute. The idea is, to the extent that we can do this to address the transient impact of STRs by trying to limit their negative impact on the, as they say, on the integrity, interconnected quality of neighborhoods. I must tell you, I continue to struggle with what they, exactly the definition of that, but I think we all sort of understand the idea that we don't want a lot of people moving in and out over time. And I think really what it amounts to be perfectly frank, is less, at least less than 1 week rentals. I think we're going to be, may well be out, at least during the high season. And finally, those are the goals. So then, some of the specifics are here, and these are obviously, again, nothing is in final. It's all sort of draft, and it all came together in this 10-hour meeting, with everybody sort of piping in. That's why obviously it took so long. So again, as I say, they want to recognize the tradition of seasonal renting, as well as the need for neighborhoods to preserve their identity. Again, I'm not quite sure. We're going to have to focus in on that. They want to regulate. All right. So the idea is regulating STRs by passing a general bylaw, as I said, accompanied by a zoning article that will confirm short-term rental rights, and regulated by the general bylaw. Prohibit short-term rentals, and all right, but this is the other key factor, which there seems to be consensus, and it was sort of loud and clear from the annual meeting that everyone is sort of against this, ownership by corporations, non-natural persons, where corporations would hold and rent rent and just purchasing properties strictly for commercial use, for the and the issue is going to be in the detail of how to try to define specifically what those how these corporations are to be defined. Apparently, there is this Great Barrington definition, which we need to take a look at more closely. But I'm confident we can come up with a definition that will basically deal with the concept of corporations out, people in. And then
Peter.
Yeah.
Shouldn't we start? That was one of the most very specific things that this fellow said when he got up speaking for the short-term rental group. And the question is the view of the short-term working group going to be that at least one of the things come out of this is that corporations cannot own properties that are engaged in short-term rental?
Yes.
It's a very simple proposition, and I think we can talk about it as a separate issue. First of all, whether it would be legal or not, I don't know, because they can obviously challenge it. But the question is, if the town decided to go along, how do we feel about saying that corporations, you cannot have a corporation own a property that is engaged in short-term rental.
I think I just quickly respond, and obviously others should chime in here. I think it's a practical matter, Gary. It could never get through the town meeting if it was anything other than that. I think there is, for what, rightly or wrongly, there is a vast support for that position. I personally, corporations are run by people. I mean, I must say the Copley Group would be grandfathered, I think, anyway. And I don't, they've run a very good operation on Island from what I can tell. They do have local contacts. It may well be that some of these, are able to get around this issue by putting people, by changing the ownership in a certain way. But the concept of, big, I think what they're, it's like the big box store on Main Street. They don't want people, outsiders, so to speak, who have no real love and tie to Nantucket coming in and operating these.
Hey, so let me just go down. I saw Scott's hand up first. So Scott, and I tell you right now, we're just talking about the corporate issue.
Yes.
And Scott, unmute your phone. Yeah.
There we go. Some drafting has to be done because a lot of people own property in LLCs.
That's okay. That's interesting, Scott. They mean LLCs, trusts,
So detailed, but shared ownership. Me and my cousin own a house. I have an LLC for liability reasons.
Right.
Just something's got to be done there to address that.
Yeah, no, that I should have mentioned that. They're okay from that. That will be done.
Okay, I think Gene had his hand up.
Yeah, a couple of things. One, a lot of real estate is held in limited partnerships. Going back 40 years when they were used as tax shelters. And so it seems the term corporation is a very specific term, and it might not apply to limited, partnerships where a general partner buys the property, has limited partnership investors, and basically it operates like a quote unquote corporation, but it's not, as I understand it, and I'm not a lawyer, it's not a corporation. So that's one issue that comes up. And the other thing is, I kind of think it's silly, personally. If I were Norm Levinson of Copley Group and I was faced with this, I would give my wife 2 of the properties. I'd keep 2 of them. I'd give my son 2. I'd give my daughter 2. And then I'd set up a management company that would manage all of those individually owned units. So there's so many easy ways around the corporation and using the term corporation that, maybe it would affect Marriott if they decided to come in, because it would be hard for the Marriotts to disperse of it easily. But for the kinds of quote unquote corporations we're talking about, I think there are so many easy ways around it that it just makes for, maybe it'll make the people happy, but it won't have any impact.
Yeah, I tend to agree, but it's going to pass in one form or another. So we just, but I think the tighter it is, the better, because we definitely need to keep LLCs and limited partnerships. I mean, the big concern is, again, the idea is, on the one hand, they're saying they're concerned about, people strictly for commercial purposes. Well, everybody's running their STRs, running it for a commercial purpose. So it's okay. Anyway, so that's.
Wait a minute, I have a question. And you've done all the research, so I'm sure you know this. Is there a precedent of any litigation, places like Palm Springs or whatever you guys have investigated? There have been challenges in the courts on this. What have they come out with?
Yeah, there's a case that I don't have it in front of me here that they're constantly referring to out of Great Barrington, Massachusetts, where this was a limitation that was approved by the Attorney General in Massachusetts. I don't know whether that's actually been challenged in court. That I don't know, but it has been approved by the Attorney General's office as being
But in other communities, there has to have been some challenge because lots of communities are trying to do what we're trying to do, and there's
Yeah.
got to be litigation somewhere.
Yeah, but it's not necessarily focused strictly on the on not
Oh.
focused strictly on corporation issues.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think that the issue there is, it's a political matter. There needs to be some restriction, some real restriction, and the corporate one seems to be the lowest hanging fruit. I've read the Great Barrington bylaw, and it's pretty clear, and I think is easily copied. My problem in this area is, leaving aside fairness and other things like that, is not using this word, strictly commercial or commercial, because that is just not it seems to me it's fraught with problems, because at heart, it seems to me renting one's house is commercial in nature, and therefore very difficult to use that word commercial to ban anything, because it would likely also ban what people are trying to do, which is rent their homes, either to make money, to make money, period. Whether you're using that money to pay the gardener or the taxes or whatever, it's using as renting the home as a source of income. And we don't want to be in a situation, I think, of banning that.
Donna has her hand up.
Yeah, I want to say that there is a distinction, and a number of communities, whether it's Palm Springs, Monterey, the wine country in Northern California, they are rising up and they are bringing it to their communities, the county, and the court system. And a number of them are succeeding. Their communities are doing it. They're rising up and succeeding
Oh yeah. No,
against commercial. And everybody knows the difference between our Nantucket tradition and something like the Copley Group or Blue Flag, which has taken over the Wood Box and so forth. So there's a definite distinction. And I think it's pretty obvious to people.
Yeah, although I must say, I mean, for the Copley Group, first of all, Copley is going to be grandfathered, so it's not going to be an issue. But
Sure.
when you have a situation with a Copley Group, similar to the Copley Group, where you have local ownership, in the sense of these people have, the principals of the corporation are longtime residents of Nantucket. Not that this is important, but have invested and are part of the community. Have local management of the companies. And they have 10 properties. It's not that much. It's the volume. It seems to me, maybe the issue is more the volume, the number of properties they have. But we're going to get to that in a minute, by the way, as to caps. So let me talk about that. But in any event, that I hear you loud and clear on corporations. All right, another issue is going to be, first of all, grandfathering. All current pre-existing STRs that don't conform with whatever new regulations we come up with will be the idea would be that they would be grandfathered until they are sold or abandoned the use. Then the idea is, and this is this one I'd be anxious to hear your thoughts, limiting the number of STR licenses to 2 licenses per owner on the same or separate property. So if you are an owner, you can only have 2 STRs. Now, I sort of raise questions with that, not because I'm necessarily against limiting the number, but where do they come up with 2 as opposed to 3 or whatever? I mean, and the data I find, I mean, again, we got some more data as to how many, it's I think they're picking it out of thin air, but that's the number they're looking at right now, is 2.
Peter, is there any data that indicates of the 2,000 short-term renters that are licensed by the state, how many of them have more than 2 properties that are being rented? Licensed?
I think it's about 15%. So it's a significant number. I mean, it's not an insignificant number, but 15% of the licensed people on Nantucket have more than 2.
Okay, so there's 15% of the people are gonna complain about that, you know.
Yeah, but they're gonna be grandfathered. They're gonna be grandfathered. They'll be grandfathered, so it's going forward.
Okay, Pamela had her hand up.
And this is a little digression, but I had a quick question for Peter. So Peter, is there a specific goal that the work group has been given to work towards in terms of this? Because I feel like there's all these sort of solutions, but I'm still one of these people that feels like the problem hasn't been specified.
Okay, well, you're right. You're right. I think, going back, and I wasn't party to this, so maybe some of you were back last year, and it's unfortunate Kathy's not on the list, but I know she was. But when this Article 39 and whatever else, the concept was, this group was supposed to come together and see if we could bring everybody, bring some sort of come to some sort of common ground. The concern, obviously, on the one, was expressed about, as we've discussed, corporations, this expansion of STRs, the breakup of neighborhoods, what have you. And then, of course, over time, there's been some concern about noise and traffic, although again, the data, interestingly, the data doesn't seem to show that STRs are contributing to that more than normal owners or residents.
So my concern is the group comes up with these proposals, but unless they're presented in a way where this is going to result, like X is going to result in Y, then, how palatable are they going to be to the community unless we think we're solving a problem?
Well, I think, again, I don't have data per se, except what I was listening to at the annual meeting. And again, those of you who were there or listening can tell, agree or disagree. There seems to be some concern generally, as we discussed with corporations, absentee corporations, for lack of a better term, and a general idea that they want to preserve the neighborhoods, and the way to do that is not to have everybody short-term renting. In other words, that there seems to be some, let's not let this just go sort of open up and become the Wild West. Let's sort of keep it where it is, maybe up as much as 10%, but keep it sort of generally where it is. And by the way, as I should make it very clear, there is also consensus, and I think very important that we, for our purposes, for the ACNVT, that there be a zoning bylaw that makes it absolutely clear that STRs are legal, followed and accompanied by, and they are interrelated, so you can't pass one without the other. And that is a series of general or a bylaw that then has a series of general regulations that number that let's put this, including such things as number of rentals, etc. That sort of control the use, sorry, the operation of it. But you're right. Pamela, you're right. No one has taken a vote of what the town, people want, but I think this is just a feeling as to what might pass. Don't forget, none of us can vote, right? So we really, for purposes of passing this thing, you really are looking to the residents, right? And interestingly, by the way, 85% of the STRs are owned by non-voting taxpayers.
Yeah. So, Donna, you had a
Yeah, to Pamela's question, the fact that John Giorgio is involved, and it sounds like he's more visible than before in this whole process. I think he'll guide us to a point where we will, the STR work group will have some effective zoning laws, bylaws, etc. So I think we have to rely on John as we get closer to proposals.
John, and then there's a woman whose name escapes me, who is also consulting to make sure this is drawn up so that it passes legal muster. But the one thing that we've already met with John on several occasions, and as I say, one thing is absolutely clear: there has to be a specific zoning law combined with a general bylaw.
So Peter, basically, you need us to tell you whether we feel that if they came to the conclusion that people could only have 2 rental units for short-term rental, would that be something that we care about, the advisory committee for non-voting taxpayers? And frankly, I couldn't care less if it's 2 or 3. They want to put some limit on. The basis of all of this conjecture, which is unproven, is that the more short-term rental is permitted, the more year-round housing is diminished. And so they want to stop people from doing that. Of course, as we've said before, we've never found any connection that directly relates to that, but people believe that down deep in their soul. And so if they want to put a limit of 2 or 3 and they grandfather the existing ones, I don't have a problem with that. What about the rest of us?
Well, I think on that subject, when you start allowing more than 2, I think it becomes a situation where somebody is renting out for a short-term rental, a basement apartment or a little studio over their garage, which could be used for year-round residents, year-round workers. And that's where, I mean, the main house probably wouldn't be, and maybe a separate decent secondary dwelling wouldn't be. But once you get to more than 2, I think there are chances that that dwelling, studio apartment above the garage, etc., could be rented on a year-round basis. And if we care about taking year-round apartments out of circulation, then we shouldn't really be in favor of more than 2.
I mean,
So,
the good news, it doesn't discriminate against seasonal owners.
Well, it does.
Peter,
Go ahead.
It applies to everybody.
Peter, I think the way you stated it earlier was important. I think posturing of how this is worded is everything when you get through the town meeting. And I think if you start out this by saying STRs are approved, they're legal, here are the qualifiers, and leave it as simple as you can get. I think if you say 2 rentals, 2 a month, what all the details are going to kill you, and that's what's going to, divide people, and you won't get consensus and vote. So the simpler you can keep it, the better.
Well, Patty, that's music to my ears. I made that point. My suggestion, at least again, at this 10-hour meeting, was to sort of take this in sort of bite size, small bites. We don't have to solve we don't have to have a complete global resolution of this at this point. I mean, this is going to be, and as we have seen in many other jurisdictions, this is an evolving kind of thing. So let's go with the low-hanging fruit, the corporate stuff, and making sure that we have a specific bylaw, a zoning law, and a general one, and maybe limiting it to full week rentals during the high season. But anyway, I hear you. It's going to be, because and ultimately the bottom line is getting this thing passed. Okay. I'm sorry. Do we lose somebody here? All right. Let me give you. All right. So
Next issue.
This is not our. I agree with Gary too, except this is really not our issue, unless part of unless you've got you've got a lot of properties, and you got a big family. But again, you can solve that, as someone said, by giving it to your sister and your brother and whatever else. And people will get around this. And again, it's all grandfathered. So this will be somebody else. This will be somebody else's problem 20 years from now. Okay. Then all right. So a couple other things that they're talking about. Okay, as I said, in July and August, this is interesting, limiting the number of total rental contracts to 9 per unit. So that would, in and of itself, it wouldn't necessarily limit, wouldn't require 1 week rentals. But you couldn't, what they're trying to do is avoid the churn during that July and August period. I need to hear more about that. That was sort of just mentioned.
Well, why phrase it that way, Peter, rather than just saying a minimum 7-day rental?
I know. I don't know. I think that because I think there are some people. I mean, Kathy, for example, although it's, I don't want to speak for her, but my understanding from her rentals are often just weekends and people, long weekends. I don't know how much of hers is done during high season as opposed, I know she does a lot of wedding stuff and other things during the shoulder season.
That's using the shoulder, yeah.
Yeah, I know, but I mean,
This is the first proposal that I've heard that at least seems to be aimed towards solving some sort of problem other than this general sense that short-term rentals are a problem. And you mentioned a churn, which means the ferry boat and, car reservations and all the rest of that stuff, which are, have become a big problem for a lot of people. It would limit that back and forth. At the very least, allay some of the weekend congestion down at the port. There's something that sounds at least rationally related to an actual problem that everybody experiences.
Yeah, I think it also, Peter, I think it also, there is a concern, and I can understand this, because people rent on both sides of me. It hasn't been a problem, but if you start having turnover 2 or 3 twice a week, that just the move in and move out aspects create noise and whatever. Yeah. And so I can see the value in trying to limit that to a certain extent.
But do we care about it?
Yeah, I know.
Yes.
I do. Yeah, no, I think
Yes.
we do. I think we do as that part we care about. It's I care about the noise and the traffic. I don't think most of the time you can't attribute that directly to the STRs, but what you can do is when there's 2 or 3 times a week in your neighborhood, that does, I think it's pretty clear that contributes to that kind of congestion and noise and what have you.
It becomes disruptive.
Yeah.
Actually.
Okay, then, all right, so let me just look here. Okay, then just looking at some other things here. Okay. Yeah, now, again, whether it's this idea of 1 week, or I'm sorry, there's another thought that we should just limit, 1 contract per week, as I say, during from Memorial Day through Labor Day, and then open it up to whatever people want to do thereafter. That may make some sense. And then this one we really didn't get a chance to discuss, but we had broken into small groups and we didn't get a chance to discuss them on the bigger group, but cap at 10% above the current number. There are no total caps that are being discussed other than no owner can, rent more than 2 properties. But then the question is, if you put a total cap in there, then you're going to have an issue of licenses and who gets them and what have you. So that seems to me to be a bit of a, something at least I would like to avoid at the outset. Along as Patty suggested, less is more, at least at the beginning. If we can get something passed that we can then refine in the years to come. Gene?
Yeah, I don't know if this ties into that, but it's something that I would be concerned about, and I suspect lots of other non-voting taxpayers would be as well. We own our house and we use it. We don't rent it at all. Say my wife and I can no longer use it for whatever reason, whether we've passed or whatever, and my daughter inherits it. Now, she may not be able to, for family reasons or where she lives, not be able to use it all summer. I don't want this regulation to prohibit her from renting it because it wasn't previously in the rental pool, and now she comes along and needs to rent it half a dozen weeks or whatever it is a year to cover the costs. I don't know. That's an issue that would be of great concern to me, and I suspect lots of other non-voting taxpayers.
I agree, and I think that's where the issue of capping becomes a problem, because they're going to, the people who have existing, who are still in existence when it starts, they have the license, right? And then if they pass away, the question is, does the license pass with them? And, there's talk on both sides, but that's something, so that has not been resolved. It shouldn't be a problem, although it shouldn't be a problem if there's no caps, right? But that I agree, and I'll try to work on that, to the extent that comes up.
Peter, I was also curious as to whether there's been any discussion about truly seasonal communities, like the Village of Sconset, which basically has probably, that little core area has a few year-round residents, but most of those houses are still, a good number of them are, not winterized, wouldn't be in the affordable housing market. And a lot of them are rental. I mean, that's a lot of that community. And my original house, which I still own in the Village for the past like 25 years, we never rented it until 2 years ago because we bought a more year-round house. And the only reason we're renting it is so my children can have it more when they can use it more. But, I do long-term rentals. I do 2 6-week rentals and I'm done. So, but I know there's a lot of homes there where that community, like you can join the Sconset Casino if you've rented in the Village for, 5 consecutive years. A lot of that community is people who come over and over again and rent. So it just, there's like so many different dynamics in different neighborhoods. And I wonder if there's any talk about seasonal houses versus non-seasonal houses, because
the only thing first of all, there's been no discussion about trying to cut back on the ability at Sconset or whatever to rent. So the only area that there's been some concern, I'm trying to find it in my notes. I thought I had it. I'm struggling to, the old story, when you want it, you can't find it. But the issue, there has been some discussion, no consensus yet, on limiting the rentals in for the areas of affordable housing. In other words, people,
yeah. I mean, that makes sense. Yeah.
But there's been nothing. No one has suggested that. I mean, obviously, if there's not heat, you're not going to be able to rent it year round, right?
Yeah. And I also think we need clarification too on the whole registry process. Like, do I have to register my house because I do?
Well, if
I
you do
don't
6
do
weeks,
short term, I do
no.
long term.
No, you can't. No, you're okay. I mean, anything above 30 days is not considered short-term rental. And then there's a limit. By the way, the thing that I'm confused on, which I need to find out on, if you rent for only a total of 14 days total, then you don't have to register at all, I don't believe.
Well, I know you didn't have to pay the tax.
That's correct.
You don't have to pay the
Peter,
tax.
that is correct.
Clearly,
You
but I
don't
don't
have to register.
I don't think you have to register either.
You don't have to.
There is, by the way, there is that bylaw. I haven't looked at it recently, but that has passed, right? There is that health bylaw that contains some of this stuff, and we will build upon that. But we should probably all take a closer look at that.
Okay. Are there other points that we should be discussing?
I think those are the ones. Just looking again at my notes. Sorry. That's what I have. Oh, here, yeah. Here I have my note. Prohibit STRs in affordable housing. Let's just discuss that. But there again, you could do 14 days or less, or 31 days or more. So you get around the whole problem altogether.
Okay.
That's
No, that's good. So I don't think there's anything we need to vote on. I think you've got sort of the sense of this group that shorter is better. I mean, I think in part, I think the best course for the seasonal owners as ourselves at this point is just to get the zoning bylaw passed that clearly allows this, and then starts minimal light-handed regulation of the rental, and you learn as you go, and there's an opportunity to make changes based on changing needs or new problems that emerge, that sort of thing.
And also, and again, and then go back to what, you know, my mandate from the group was to make sure there was no discrimination between seasonal rentals, and I think we're pretty well set there. And, you know, that's, by the way, another reason why it was important to defeat, obviously, Article 60.
Right.
Because that did discriminate.
Good, good. So let's move on. We're getting close to being finished. Need to try to find my agenda here. I got it. In meetings, June through Labor Day. I did write to the town asking about a hybrid meeting room, and I received no response, so I need to go and push on that. I will do that. The question, I guess, two questions. What is the date of our next meeting? And what should we do? Obviously, we'll have some more to discuss about short-term rentals by then, because I think there will have been 2 meetings of the short-term rental working group. The first one is this one on the 16th that we've been discussing today. And then there's going to be a public meeting.
I could have mentioned that.
They're all public meetings, but
well, they're all, yeah, but this one is specifically on June 1st, if you're on island.
Yeah.
But I think also, obviously, if you want to sit in front of a screen, there is the idea will be to take input from the public, much like we did back in the fall, but now with a little more specificity, I guess, on where people are. So that will be a good opportunity to hear what, to hear what, if we're going down the right track.
yeah. And there's nothing that stops any member of this group in any event from attending any of these meetings and, giving their views,
Right.
whether or not.
There's public comment at every meeting. Unfortunately, it tends to be at the end, so you gotta either sit through the whole thing or just come for the end, but yeah.
So is June 17th, which is, a little bit more than a month from now, that's a Saturday, I believe. And is that a good date for people on this? And whether or not it's remote like this or hybrid on island? I know I'm suggest that date because I know I'm going to be on the island on June 17th. I don't know about anybody else.
I'll be there.
I will also be there.
I know I can't make that, but that's okay.
But
Can I
So
just
can-
ask, we're
Yeah.
it's scheduled for June 10th, right? The
Correct.
next meeting is scheduled for June 10th, I think, right?
It is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
If that's a problem for me, I mean, June 10th, I'll be in a car. I can do it, but it's not great.
And so you're suggesting moving it to the 17th? Is that what I'm hearing?
suggesting the 17th instead of the 10th.
Okay, I'm here for both of those dates, but I do have a wedding on the 17th, but it's in the afternoon, so I'll be fine if it's normal timing.
Yep,
Okay,
I'm good.
good. So
One thing I just want to, and I know I'm new, so I shouldn't be talking as much as I am, but I joined because I really feel strongly about having a group like this or having some representation. But I didn't even really know that much about it. And the only reason I'm on it is because our Monomoy Association is very active, as you know, and they wanted somebody to have some ears to the meetings. But I think it's important, at least my agenda is to get more people on island knowing that there is such a meeting, a group as this. And if you had a hybrid, at least, during the summer, you could get more people, oh, there's a meeting, we could go and voice some of our concern, that kind of thing, to get more knowledge into the people who don't get to vote, that there is some representation. I don't know where the hybrid in person would be, maybe the library or somewhere, but it would be nice to have something that we could put in the, the current and so on, saying, oh, there's a meeting June 17th in person if you want to be part of this kind of thing. Just again, a publicity thing.
Sure.
How
Patty,
are
we-
you thinking?
I have been suggesting that we utilize the Inky and the Nantucket Current to just advise people that this is what we have going on,
Yeah,
and they
Yeah,
can
I guess
join.
just for a little history, we before COVID, we met every 2 weeks on a Saturday. Gary will remember, of course, and others, in the upstairs of the police building there, and in the conference room. And it was advertised, it was on the calendar. Nobody shows up but this group. But hey, the more people show up, great. But I think the practical matter now with hybrid, maybe it's actually easier for people to show up. I don't know, but I must tell you, I would very much prefer, having done both, to do as much as we can, at least for those who want to do it in person. It's just much more effective and pleasant. So if Peter, I urge you to work with the town if you can to get that, even if it's the trailer, it's at least we're in person, and obviously those who can't make it can be on Zoom.
Peter, in the months that it has been available online as a hybrid, has anyone in the call?
That's right. You broke
Has
up.
anyone joined in the call in all these months has been available on hybrid?
Joined in, other than the people who are on the
Yeah.
screen?
Other
I
than
mean,
people on the committee?
no.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, I
Generally,
think-
what happened is we've had our greatest public participation is in virtual meetings like this. And what generally sparks the participation is some issue. And indeed, it's been the short-term rental issue. A year or so ago, we were getting a number of people from Monomoy and from other places on the island who had one axe to grind or another with regard to short-term rental, and that's what brought them out. I always like to say we have a voice, but we don't have a vote, but at least we do have a statutory right to speak at the town meeting. And we've exercised that in the past.
Well, I'm sorry. The other thing, I mean, I must say, I look forward to the day when we can go back to doing what we've done traditionally, which is to talk about, to meet with the public works, department head, and to meet with the traffic guy who runs traffic. There are a lot of issues out there that we should be talking about other than, short-term rental. And so hopefully we
Yes.
can get that behind us and get back to normal and that's.
but I think the
We
point,
should be on some sort of a calendar so that if anybody is interested, they can tune in. It's up to them.
but all of us that are off island, I do think I get most of my information off of the internet and the current and the Daybreak or whatever. And I don't know, we need a good PR person. Now, I'm not necessarily a great PR person. I think Steve Perlman, he's volunteered on that regard, but I think there could be a subcommittee that maybe said, how are we getting the information out? Because I think everything everybody's just said is that I don't think enough people know this exists.
Well, one thing we might be able, one thing we might do is to say, okay, at least for the summer, let's sketch out how often do we want to meet and which week, which days we're going to meet, so that we can, between June and September, and then try to lock that in as soon as we can. And then we can, if there's some people who want to make sure that gets in the Inky or other public sources, we can do that. Maybe, Peter, I'd suggest that we first figure out, is it every 2 weeks? Is it every 3 weeks? Is it every 4 weeks? And then people look at their calendars, and you can do one of those monkey polls or whatever you do, where people put back, come respond and say, okay, I can do this, and this, and see which weeks work best.
Well, wait a minute, I'm just hearing it's two things. And I'll address the first thing and then the second thing in that order. One is we need a PR committee. And I think that is right, because somebody in our group here may have ideas about how to better publicize what we're doing than what we've done in the past, which has been an occasional letter to the Inky. And I've written probably 3 to 5 letters over the last 2 years. Gary's written letters, and I must say, they're not. I've never had a response to any one of the letters. So either I'm not a bad writer or people just don't care. But I think it would be good, and a couple of us could get together and think about ways in which to better publicize this. The second point, though, is this meeting schedule. I think it's probably critically important, not just to advertise when we're meeting, but to have a headline issue for each one of these meetings, so that people who have an interest in one thing or another will say, "Oh, I would really, I have something I want to say about that." And so, for example, we have in the past, had the public works guy on, the transportation guy on, Libby Gibson on to give a State of the Union address and what have you. And that would probably, along with our schedule, when our meetings are, some accurate idea of what the main point of that particular meeting is. Because if my interest in attending is either overall, which it's just been knowing more about the island, but specifically if there's something of importance to me or my family, that's when I'm more likely to attend. So I think we can do those two things.
I think that's a very good idea, Peter.
The only issue, Peter, is a practical one. I don't disagree with the concept. It's a practical one. It's hard to lay that out for the summer at this point. But people schedule, it's for the guests, right? It's to lock Libby. Libby is easier probably, but to make to set our schedule of the different people. Usually it's 2 or 3 weeks ahead of time. We certainly can. We certainly can advertise in the week ahead of time who's going to be there. That's not a problem. But to try to do it, have a broad fixed schedule of speakers for the summer, I think it's going to be tough. But maybe I'm wrong.
I also think the summer is a difficult time to do that, but you know what, off season, since most of us are seasonal, off season, I think that would be a very good time to occasionally schedule guest speakers so that people could tune in on the hybrid by Zoom and attend sessions that are of interest to them.
Okay. Well, remember our ability to do virtual meetings is not certain into the unlimited future.
Right, but you are requesting that, aren't you?
But
we did last year, and it was extended. I can't, sitting here, remember how long.
2-year extension, Peter.
2 years. So we have 2 years in secure in this format. What we also don't know is the hybrid facility. We actually have 3 different forms of meetings, right? One is just an in-person meeting. Another is a hybrid meeting where we're mostly in person, but people can tune in from afar. And the third is a total virtual meeting like this meeting. We know that those last 2, hybrid and virtual, at least have a 2-year lifespan. Right. So let's get real short term and just talk about this summer. It seems to me that we can probably at least 2 meetings in a row, probably reasonably plan what we're going to do. And so I'll propose for the 17th. Shall I invite Libby to do her State of the Union address? And then I think that the next one up ought to be, if we can get this person, whoever the new old transportation planner is, Because that's a big issue for us. And I read in one Inky or someplace else that they are now doing a renewed long-term transportation study for the island. So it's going to be, another issue. So I'll try to pin those two down. Yep, Donna.
Yeah, another one is Curtis Barnes' proposal to revamp the government. I think that would be of interest to a lot of people.
Yeah, we have had that. I mean, he did appear before us.
Yes, he did, but it's been passed. The committee to study that was passed at the town meeting on Saturday. So maybe we could have an update.
Okay, so that's a very good, thank you for that reminder. That reminded me that I think, within the last several months, Libby asked, if such a committee is established, would we be interested in having a representative on the committee?
Yes.
And I said yes, but I've heard nothing since. And so I'll follow that up as well. And then we might, discuss amongst ourselves who is interested in that. If it's a similar format to the STRWG, where we'd have a principal and an alternate, as Peter and Bill can say, it's been I think a very big time commitment
Yeah.
to participate in that committee, made a lot easier by the virtual, being able to meet virtually. But I'll see if we can get our foot in that door. And I would say by the, a little bit later in the summer, there should be some idea about how it's going to be formed, how that, that would be a very, very good opportunity to have somebody come in and speak and give our 2 cents to them.
Peter, I see that committee that they are going to form is an opportunity for our committee to become more effective. I think it's very important that we get on whatever kind of committee that's being formed.
Yeah, no,
Government.
because you have a smaller target to affect. The real issue is what this new form of government will be, and then what role, if any, will this committee play? Because one option would be just to get rid of this committee. So I guess that would be one of our affirmative points. Would be this is a committee that is of value to governing.
Yeah. I think it's our opportunity.
Yeah.
Can we
Okay.
go back to the 17th? Is the 17th when their the big meeting is for everybody to hear about the rental?
It's the
No.
16th.
Oh, it's the 16th. Okay. Can I suggest that we
No,
don't-
that's not gonna, hold on, there's confusion. 16th is of May. What are we, okay, I think Patty was talking about the 16th of June, right?
Ah,
No,
no.
there is no, and first of all, it's the 16th of May is strictly a working group meeting. The public meeting will be on the 1st of June.
of the
Okay.
first? Okay.
So that's,
And
so-
then is there any way of not always doing it on Saturday, especially on the weekends where
I
in the
agree.
summer?
well,
We've discussed that in the past. So I'm just getting a calendar out to see that we're.
I think it's
talking
important,
about-
whatever day, I think it's important that we have a fixed day and a fixed set of time, because I mean, I think it's just easier to say, okay, look, whatever it is, a Saturday morning or Friday, I'm locked in
Yeah.
that time period. People who work,
Let me,
perfect, and there are people who work still, and so doing it during the work week is a little tougher. But anyway,
I think there are two issues to discuss here. One is a different day ever, and I think we're not going to arrive at that today, but also, a different hour on the Saturday. Would it be helpful if we met at 9 instead of 10? I don't know.
Okay.
that's fine. It interferes with Gene's golf game. I'm confident of that. So-
That's why I can't do the 17th, actually.
Oh,
I just think that was just a
Harvey
guess.
Foundation
That
is
was
a big
just a guess.
Gorman, fundraiser.
So just to be clear, on these various dates, the short-term rental group meeting is on May 16th. The public hearing having to do with short-term rentals is on June 1st, right?
Yeah, but it's not a public, it's just that the public is being invited to a meeting that is hosted by the STRWG. So it's, but on June 1st, yes.
June 1st.
But
So
there's, I'm sorry, there's no participation at all, Peter, on May 16th for the
No,
public,
just,
the end?
no, I mean, it's just the normal at the end of the meeting.
Yeah, at the end, so you can,
Oh,
yeah, yeah, you can speak.
Sure.
Yeah, so just,
As usual.
I'm looking at their agenda and they say at 7:40, there'll be a 20-minute public
Mhm.
comment period. And, whether it actually happens at 7:40, it's one of the last things before they adjourn the meeting.
Right.
And they have scheduled, I think, the sessions that are probably most relevant to what we talked about today, starting at 6:15. And that meeting starts, I guess, at 5 o'clock. So that's all to say that if you're interested in these specific issues, you don't have to, tune in at the beginning. You do have to pre-register, I believe, in
Yes.
order to participate, and that information is right on the first page of the agenda. And I've done this before, and it's almost like an automatic pre-register. You just pre-register and you get a bounce back message almost immediately saying you're registered.
Yeah.
So that's not a big issue. So then Thursday, June 1st, there is this other public intake meeting sponsored by the working group. And then what we're talking about is June 17th, Saturday, June 17th, for our next meeting. So we all on the same calendar now?
We're on June 10th before now. What's the difference between the 10th and the 17th?
Well, I'm going to be on the island on the 17th. That's a difference for me.
So will I, and I'll be on island.
Okay,
Yeah.
me too.
And if I'm lucky, I might actually be able to find a space that we would all meet in by now. It's a month away, so there's a chance of that. And I'll try to get Libby for that. If I can't get Libby, then I'll try to get the transportation person and what have you. And at least try to get these first 3 people down: Libby, transportation, and Curtis Barnes / new form of government onto our schedules. So we'll have, the first half of the summer more or less mapped out.
But I urge you to try to get whoever's running the public works department, in there.
Yeah, well, is there no public works guy now, or?
There is,
No,
and I think
nobody's
there's an
in charge.
acting guy.
Yeah. So DPW again, I mean, most of their problems, I think, may have been not solved, but at least beginning to be solved by, as I understand it, last week, they decided to raise all of the salaries of everybody on the island.
Yes.
Except us. And that should help them, get employees, because it seemed to me the biggest problem was they couldn't attract employees to do the work, and that made it difficult. So hopefully.
Important to hear about, what are their priorities, I mean, that, we can, all of us have thoughts about priorities, areas that could use attention. It's always a good opportunity to be heard.
Yeah. So I've got so those are 4, and I guess we can add more at the next meeting.
Well, I think I would suggest also Gary's group. I mean, Gary sent around. I mean, I think the whole coastal.
Oh, yeah.
is very important.
Yeah. Climate.
CO2s and whatever else the hell's going on out there.
On housing. How about getting somebody in on housing now that we passed permanent
Yes.
funding?
Yeah.
Oh,
well,
yeah.
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 You always get Tucker Holland. He'll be glad to show up.
Okay. So
Yeah, by the way, I mean, Tucker,
Gary-
sorry.
Gary, when do you think is an optimal time for your group? And do you want to have somebody from that group make a presentation or?
Oh,
do you-
absolutely. Either Vince or Leah. And I'm sure they'll be willing to do so.
Okay,
The plan that I sent you all was formally presented last Wednesday to the select board, so it's now part of their official minutes, but you've seen it all. It's, to me, it was a good summary, plus the list of the 40 priority projects and where we are on some of them. And, we're making progress on some of them. And of course, the biggest side issue, which no one is figuring out how to deal with, including the Coastal Resiliency Group, is what to do with that crazy situation in Sconset, the battle between the Conservation Committee, and the Select Board and that Sconset group as well. So that's still up in the air. More to come on that. But the Coastal Resilience Committee is not making those decisions. They're really up to the courts and Select Board.
okay.
By the way, I have a couple of comments, generally speaking. One with respect to the proposal to form this committee to study the form of government. A long time ago, I spoke to Libby about it, and she said to me the same thing she said to Peter Halley, which is that she certainly would consider making somebody from our group as an important part of that committee to rethink the form of government. So I think that she probably would be amenable to that when they get around to deciding what the membership should be. To me, the most important point of that, I watched the town meeting, and I watched it on Saturday and I watched it on Monday night. And if I wasn't lazy, I would write a letter to the editor, because the title of it would be The Failure of Democracy. And I watched during the meeting when all these old farts my age stood up and said, this is the democratic form of government. It's really important to us. And I look around and I see there's nobody in their 20s, there's nobody in their 30s, there's nobody in their 40s, there's nobody in their 50s. The parents with children are home watching them. The people who have jobs are watching them. There are no Latino, there are no ethnic groups. It's the most prejudicial situation. So it turns out we have 9,200 voters in the town of Nantucket. The total for the first day, when it was a big deal, was about 950. So we had about almost 10% of the population on the first day. The second day, when they passed a whole bunch of things, we had less than 5% of the population. So less than 5% of the voting population is passing laws like that crazy lighting law that nobody understands that they passed. And all the
Amen.
other stuff they did on the second day, less than 5. It's so outrageous. And people are patting themselves on the back saying, this is a real true form of democracy. And they basically shut out most of the voting population because of the schedule. Anyway, not that I have strong feelings about it, but
That was the intent.
You should have recorded that, then you could have send it into the Inky.
I did actually, Gene, last year, I made a speech, in the section of the select board meeting that they asked for public comment. Right after the annual meeting, I made a speech. And in that speech, what I said is, just imagine that if the United States Senate, which has 100 senators, had a meeting in which only 10 senators showed up and passed a law affecting everybody in the nation, you'd all scream and say that's undemocratic. And then I said in my speech, that's exactly what happened at last year's annual meeting, because less than 10% of the people showed up and passed laws governing the entire island. And it happened again this year, so I can't keep up. I'm running out of energy at my old age, I'm afraid, but it's so clear that so many people are being disenfranchised by this system, and no one feels strong enough to do something about it, except the old timers, the activists. Those are the same people that show up. They speak every other motion, as you saw. It's just frustrating to me.
Well, this also, I
But-
agree with I would agree, I agree that this also gives us the opportunity to take a shot at having a seat, literally a seat at the table. That
Exactly.
we might be at least on, you know, on some sort of town council, have a, you know, which would be unbelievable if we could pull that off.
I think it's time for a new form of government. A small minority is deciding what's happening with our future. Doesn't make
5%.
sense.
Are you talking about the United States or Nantucket?
Well, there's that too.
Okay, so does anybody have a motion to adjourn?
I'm
The,
to go adjourn.
Okay, good. A second?
A second.
Okay, all those in favor? Anybody opposed to adjourning? Thank you so much. It's been very interesting, and I'm going to just stop the recording.